Welcome to the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. I'm your host, Mike Chapman, and with me today is Alex Abraham, who is a survivor of CSA and works with survivors of CSA. So I'm very excited to learn more about him and his story. And we do have an audience here live. If you would like to join us on future episodes, you can learn more about how to do so at polarlifeconsulting.com/live. And a reminder for those people in the audience today, we will honor anonymity. You can put your questions or comments into chat, and we will only state your name if you manually type it in with each question or comment. Otherwise, we will just refer to you as one of our audience members. I would like to introduce our guest today, which is Alex Abraham. Alex has spent years researching, exploring, and experiencing firsthand the therapeutic treatment options for healing from childhood sexual abuse. Woohoo! Psychedelics and integration therapy forever changed his life, and I can't wait to pick his brain about those things. When not educating other survivors about the benefits of psychedelics, Alex enjoys traveling the world and experiencing new foods. A connoisseur of food truck fare, he lives in Austin, Texas. And welcome, Alex, and we're going to, like most weeks, go into 4 questions. Now it's time for 4 questions, that part of the podcast when we get to know our guest a bit better by asking a few questions. Let's go. So, what is your favorite food memory?
Sure. So I was in India for a wedding about a month ago, and
India,
while
wow.
I was there, I did some traveling around the country, and I was in Varanasi, which is the Hindu capital of India, and they do a lot of spiritual Hindu stuff there. And I stayed at a hotel, and at the hotel, they had a restaurant, and that restaurant was probably one of the most delicious Indian food I've ever had in my life. Full of flavor and full of different sort of almost colorful, and it looked majestic
Right.
and it tasted incredible. And that would be one of my favorite food memories. I think India has one of the best food cultures in the world, and it's really
Yes.
incredible what they've been able to do over there.
And I believe India, there's so many subcultures and so much history within that relatively small country of India, geographical wise, but over 1 billion people live in India, I believe. So all those subcultures coming together, I'm sure. Yeah, I've had quite a bit of Indian food and I do love it. I love the spice, but then just the blending of flavors, and they have such a variety. I agree, absolutely. So, what is your favorite Christmas or holiday memory?
My favorite Christmas or holiday memory, I usually travel for Christmas. And so I went to Japan with my mom a couple years ago, and that was pretty awesome. I think for Christmas, for me, especially these days, it's a really good excuse to travel the world and see new places because a lot of the US sort of shuts down. And so these days, when I think of Christmas, I think of travel, and that brings me a lot of happiness and joy.
Absolutely. But any specific memory?
I'll go with when I was very small. I was watching this movie called Olive about a little small dog when I was 5 years old.
All of
And
the other reindeer. I
yeah,
love
that's
that
right.
show. Yes.
So the
Drew
reindeer.
Barrymore made it, and they
Yeah.
don't show it anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think all of the reindeer. I was watching that. I remember in my pajamas with what are those things they leave for the reindeer, like scones or not a biscuit. You know what I'm talking about, like with carrots and whatever. And they tasted really good, and I ate some. And I was really excited for the reindeer to come, and it was just an incredible day. Something I'll never forget.
Wonderful. And it's based on really the joke from the song. And if you know my story, I'm also a Santa performer. So, yeah, did you know Rudolph had a sister? Really? Yes. Her name is Olive. Olive the other reindeer, because it's a line of the song, and that's where it came from. Olive the other reindeer. So it's part of that song, and that's where
Absolutely.
Drew Barrymore came up with this whole story. I think it might have been based on a book, but then she produced it and she voiced Olive. I don't know if you knew that. That Drew Barrymore, who's now a talk show host and was
I
on
did not
ET.
know
And
that.
yes, it was Drew Barrymore. But yeah, it was a great little cartoon. I don't know why they don't show it anymore. It was a nice little holiday cartoon. So yeah, you can find it online, like YouTube and whatnot. There's a few places you can find it, but formal versions really aren't out there. Let's see. So, what is your favorite church or house of worship memory?
I didn't go to very much houses of worship growing up. I sort of, I guess, grew up an atheist or
Hmm.
non-denominational. But I guess growing up, I went to several bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs of friends and cousins and things of that nature.
Right,
And the food was always quite good, and it was always a time of celebration and
right.
spirit. So those would be sort of my favorite. I never went to church as a kid, so those would be sort of my favorite house of worship memories.
Oh, absolutely. And food. So many of those things center around food. And you mentioned Christmas as well. And food has such a deep memory. And in the survivor community, we talk about triggers, but those are positive triggers. And smells and tastes have such strong memory ties in our brain. So when we smell something or taste something, boom, we're right back to where we experienced that taste or smell. So it can be a very good trigger instead of the not so good triggers that a lot of us face as well. So,
Sure.
yes, absolutely love anything related to food. I love to hear stories about food. That's excellent. So, what is your favorite scripture or any inspirational quote that has helped you on your spiritual journey? And what about it speaks to you?
That's a really good question. I don't know. This might be cheating a little bit, but one quote that I've heard, I can't actually attribute to anybody, but it's something I've definitely resonated with me, is that the souls that want to evolve pick the hardest trials. And the
And say that
idea
again, the souls.
that want to evolve the most pick sort of the hardest trials. And
Oh,
I
yeah,
think that that's really resonated with me because I did have a very difficult childhood. And I think that has sparked a lot of evolution in me. And I think the idea that the kind of spirit within us that wants to grow the most by picking these hard trials, these hard childhoods, they can really sort of evolve and grow in maybe ways that people that didn't have all this difficult shit happen might not evolve as much or have a harder time growing and evolving. This idea that through that trauma comes growth is something that's really resonated with me and something I've sort of told myself to be true, given kind of the experiences I've had.
right. I understand. Yeah, I like that. There's so much depth in that though a lot of us didn't necessarily choose the trials, but yes, someone like I watch Survivor and I know when they do like final three and it's the fire making, okay, no, I have the power to choose. And instead of just picking two people to battle, I'm going to give up that power and build a fire myself for the big final fire making challenge if you watch Survivor. And they were able to guarantee their win because they gave up the power and they made it even more difficult to win that final battle by battling and fire and winning. And I think that pushed them over the edge to win the whole thing. So, yeah, it's that same kind of concept where, yeah, choose the biggest battle and that helps your growth for sure. Absolutely. So, with that, I would love to learn more about your story. I know you are also a survivor. So let me learn more about that journey, what you experienced. You can go in as much detail as you would like, as you feel comfortable with. And for many of us, we bounce around the timeline. So depending on how things were experienced, how things were remembered, and so forth, feel free to bounce along the timeline as much as you need to. And then once we hear your story, I would love to hear more about your healing journey, what things you've done that has worked, and what things you have done that has not worked or has been less successful. And then from there, I would love to learn more about what you're doing today, including all of the therapeutic treatment options you're experiencing and developing for survivors of abuse and love to pick your brain because I'm so fascinated and it's something I would like to look into for myself as well, just to experience it, but then to let people know, okay, whether it's good, whether it's bad, what to expect. And I got a bunch of questions. So let's hear more about Alex.
Sure. So I'll start my story. I was 23 years old. I had just graduated from college and I was riding a bike around the Netherlands. And, I went on a long bike ride. And when I got off the bike, I felt almost like a clenching in my pelvic floor, like a tightness, like a
Hmm.
clenched fist, so to speak, and it was very tight, and I didn't know what to do. And so it seemed to get rapidly worse over the weeks and months to come. And so I started really panicking about this. I started seeing all these doctors, and they were not very helpful. A lot of urologists, and they would kind of go in there and they could tell like something was not quite right, but they really had no idea. And they're like, what do you think is wrong with you? They put me on antibiotics. They did these very invasive treatments over time. Like I did Botox down there.
Wow.
I had all these people going in there. At one point, I went to a clinic and they handed me this like stick like thing to almost like put down there as like almost like a back scratcher, but it
Right.
rectally. So that was pretty unpleasant and it really didn't work. And I was seeing all these pelvic floor physical therapists all at the same time, and the idea was they would try to go in there and try to calm the muscles down because I was very hypertonic, like very tense. And I didn't know what to do about this. So, I tried vacationing, I tried meditating, I tried sauna, I tried swimming, tried exercising, and really nothing was working. And my whole body sort of felt like a rod, almost like a tight rod over time. And so I really had no idea to do with this pelvic floor problem. I tried every sort of Western modality under the sun. And, I saw like 20 doctors around the country over the next like 3 or 4 years. I saw all these pelvic floor physical therapists. I tried acupuncture. I tried everything Western medicine, and even acupuncture, I guess, is more of an Eastern modality, had to offer. And I really had no idea what was wrong. I was panicked. I was depressed. I was hurting every aspect of my life. I had a normal erection. I was having trouble going to the bathroom. I was waking up every night to urinate in the middle of the night no matter what. And even like small trickles would come out. Like even if I tried to not drink anything, and I was still waking up all the time, tense. And I had trouble going to sleep. I got a little addicted to Valium because what happened is they would give me these Valium suppositories to literally insert down there and try to calm down.
Wow.
And that worked a little bit, but I got pretty into them for a while, and that was not good. I had a prescription grade muscle relaxant, so it really made it impossible to do much of anything. And I was quite miserable. My work was suffering. My friendships were suffering. I was in a bad place. And so at the same time, I'd heard of MDMA assisted psychotherapy, kind of through the grapevine. Tim Ferriss, someone I'm a fan of, and someone who also was unfortunately sexually abused as a child, had talked about using MDMA therapy, and another guy, Tucker Max, had talked about his own experience with psychedelics, and that really resonated with me. So at the time, I thought I was doing MDMA for anxiety, but I found someone in New York that could help me with my anxiety, and I really didn't know why I was going or what the purpose was. I almost didn't go. I thought it was going to be kind of a waste of time. I didn't think I could change very much. I didn't make the connection to my body, the mind-body connection at all. That really wasn't something I believed in, but it became pretty clear after a couple of MDMA sessions that I'd actually been horribly sexually abused by a teacher when I was 6, 7, 8 years old. He groomed me. He was the music teacher at my school. He was offering private piano lessons. He really groomed my mom as well and convinced her to drive me home for about a year or so. And of course, he was sexually abusing me on all the rides in between school and the piano lessons. I had a bad teacher in second grade. And unfortunately, he told her that we were doing piano lessons after school, and I was going to find him to get abused there as well. So it was a really horrible situation, and that all started coming up in the months after I started doing MDMA therapy. And obviously, that was a really difficult time for me. I dealt with suicidal thoughts at one point. But yeah, so over time, I used MDMA-assisted psychotherapy to sort of somatically shake out all the trauma from my body. And I've also really worked a lot with psilocybin mushrooms to sort of reprogram my brain a little bit and sort of, I think, work through some of the depression and some of the self-loathing and the self-esteem and sort of negative perception I have about myself. So I know that was a lot there, so I will pause
Right.
there. But
Now, MDMA is also known as ecstasy and Molly, but I'm assuming in the clinical setting, is it injected? Or I know they'll do it like where it's like burned and you're inhaling it. And I know there's different methods. So how did they actually do that with you in the therapeutic setting?
it's
Because it wasn't
actually
just you going on a street corner and ordering
no.
Molly, whatever. Yeah, it's like, don't do that. We're not saying do that. And all your troubles will go away. Well, you'll think they are, but no. But this is very therapeutic. Lots of research done on it. So how did that happen to you? And this goes, we're jumping way ahead to what you do, but yes, this is part of your journey as well. So yeah. So what exactly did they do with you?
Sure. So initially, I worked with a woman in New York. So what it was actually in pill form.
Okay.
The standard dose is 200 milligrams, 125 with a 75 booster after an hour. So that's
Mhm.
pretty high. You will get pretty high from that. That is, but it's not believed to be neurotoxic in that
Right.
dosage, particularly if you don't take it regularly. I think if you took it every day, that might not be wise. But certainly, they don't recommend to do this therapeutically more than a month or two at a time.
Right.
And I think plenty will come up in between. That's probably, and even that, it's not something you probably want to do regularly at that dosage. But it kind of looked like a psychiatrist's office at her
Right.
place, and there was music, and there was an eye mask, and it really, it was very almost Zen-like, and it
Hmm.
felt a little bit like a meditation or something like that. But definitely with the MDMA, my body started shaking almost immediately, and that was literally me letting go of trauma that had sort of stored in my
Right.
body from my abuse and from my childhood. And I think the problem children have is they can't really discharge traumatic events very well, and so it sort of stays inside them somatically, and that leads to
Right.
anger, that leads to the physical health problems I was experiencing, those tense muscles holding all that in there, as well as sort of the IBS or somatic issues and immune issues that people have. So I think a lot of the chronic illnesses and chronic diseases that people have, some of which can absolutely be attributed to unresolved childhood trauma.
And that goes back to the book we've mentioned on the podcast before, Body Keeps the Score. And let's see, that's Bessel van der Kolk is the author. And talking about, yes, so much trauma is stored physically in the body. And that, yeah, oftentimes it needs a release. Now, before you went through this experience with the MDMA, you had zero memories of the abuse, but obviously, because of the symptoms that you were experiencing, you were then able to unlock those memories. Is that true? So you had no memories of the abuse until you started having that therapy? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, in retrospect, there was a lot of obvious signs. I had a lot of trouble with
Right.
sex, not so much with sexual function, but I never really, I had a lot of issues around it from my whole life, really. I had a lot of anger problems. I had a lot of tense muscles. I didn't have a lot of strong relationships. I had a lot of self esteem issues. And so all that was even there before I started having physical problems.
Right.
That'd been there kind of my whole life.
So
I've
there's
been
a whole
sort of,
bunch of puzzle pieces
yeah.
there that until you get the big masterpiece, it's like, oh, that's why. And everything started to make sense, right?
Absolutely. And then, when it started coming up initially, there was all sorts of somatic memory. To be honest, I felt like I
Right.
was tasting him. I felt him, inside me, to be totally honest. And it felt like I
Right.
was being re traumatized. And that was a very intense day, and that really shook me. And it was very difficult. But I think over time, my mom was supportive, my friends were supportive, and I was able to sort of work through that with different therapists. But yeah, it was a very tough day and tough situation for a long time.
Right. And how I describe it in my own story, it's a vault that holds all the secrets, but it's a leaky vault and kind of informs your life choices even while it's locked up, and it influences you how you respond to things and so forth. But then when that vault is opened, mine was age 30 and then again in 2019, where everything started coming out, especially the 2019. That's when my own trafficking experiences I got unlocked. And yeah, like you described it, you have strong PTSD flashbacks where I'm basically reliving those experiences. And because of the trafficking, it was lots of experiences, lots of different perps doing lots of different things, and my body processing those one at a time, sometimes several times during a night. But it was constant over a period of several months. And then somehow I got it all out. My body was able to get it all out, and nothing's repeated after that. But yeah, my body, like you said, that child body is just holding all that trauma and needs to get that release. And it sounds like you definitely got that through this method. And I got it through a different method, but I'm very interested, okay, where I'm at now, what effect it would have on me. So, but we'll get there. So, You now uncover all these memories of what happened. What else were you able to piece together? Was it one time? Was it multiple times? What truths were you able to glean together from the memories that got unlocked and then all these puzzle pieces?
Yeah, so the perpetrator was a music teacher at my elementary school.
Oh,
He offered piano lessons on the side. He was through the school newsletter. He came to my house. He talked to my mom a lot. They really got along. Eventually, he asked to drive me home to avoid traffic and to get because we were both going to my house. And then he was like, it would be easier if I just drove him, and then we could start the lesson earlier, and then I could leave earlier. And so then he started abusing me on the way home. And then, in
mm,
second grade, I had a bad teacher, and he convinced her that I needed to go see him for piano lessons on weekdays. So I got abused a lot. I actually don't know how many times, but it was a big number. And unfortunately, I was also abused by a babysitter when I was about 4, female, who had definitely bipolarity or some sort of mental illness and was very unstable and also hit herself. But yeah, she
mm.
definitely sexually and physically abused me as well. So, and then unfortunately, I was badly sexually abused by this teacher and another man when I was 8, on the way home to my piano lessons. So it was a very dark situation. That situation in particular was sort of like a life and death thing.
So
I
were
go
they
into,
together, or was it just
yeah,
another random person? So the
they,
piano teacher and a second man?
yeah, they were
Wow.
together, and yeah, it didn't go very well, even for that genre. This is all in my book, so I'm not in the sense that like, yeah, I've already sort of come to grips with all this. But yeah, it
Right.
was a very dark situation. I did obviously survive, but there was a lot of physical issues, and I think a lot of the adult issues I've had around my body stem from that incident in particular. So yeah, not a good
Right.
situation at all. Eventually, this individual was choking me pretty frequently to sort of intimidate me, and eventually he choked me one time quite badly and stopped because I fought back. Or stopped the abuse towards the end of my second grade year. And then I just never had any contact with him. We would say hi in the hallways, I guess, and he was my piano music teacher, but he stopped giving me piano lessons, and I really never had a detailed conversation with him after that. So yeah, I decided once this all came up, I eventually decided to go to the police. I testified, or I gave an interview and named him. My mom talked to him on the
Mm.
phone on a recorded line to try to get him to confess. He did not confess. The police came and talked to him for about half an hour, and he denied it. And they said that they weren't going to press charges. And at that point, I decided to write an open letter to my school system naming him. There was about 35 people on the letter. And yeah, I named him in detail, and my school system just said that the police said there was no evidence and he was going to stay. And he won an award that year for his teaching. So it was a tough situation.
Wow.
It is a tough situation. He's still there. So
Wow.
obviously that's
Have
frustrating. We'll
you
see.
have you been public enough where other victims might have been able to hear your story enough where they might be encouraged to come forward? Has that ever
Maybe.
happened?
I've gotten some cryptic messages for some guys in my grade. Because this
Hmm.
dude, he was abusing males, I think, just males.
Right.
So we'll see what happens, with podcasts like this one or my book. But I think it's pretty obvious to anybody who went to my elementary school what this individual's name is. I'm happy to tell anyone, maybe not in public, but in private. I know it's him. Like I don't have
And
anything
was
to
it
hide
all
there.
in Texas as well where
No,
this
no. I grew up.
happened?
I grew up in Virginia, near Washington D.C. I'm in Fairfax County. I moved to Texas a couple
Really?
years
Okay.
ago.
I
Yeah,
used to live in Fairfax County myself. So,
yeah. So yeah,
okay.
that's where a lot of my book takes place and where I grew up. So we'll see what happens in the days, months, years to come. But my book's always gonna be out there, so who knows?
Wow. Wow. Now, this happened, you started at age 23 in the Netherlands when all this discovery happened. How old are you now? Because you come across very young. I have a baby face. So, yeah, I looked a lot younger, which got me into trouble because at 20, the minister abused me and he liked teenage boys and I looked like a teenager, though I was 20 at the time. So, how old are you now?
Sure. So I started doing MDMA at 27. So I've been doing psychedelics for about the last 4 years, and I'm
Okay,
31
so you're
now.
31?
Yeah. So yeah, my book came out in December. I'm still doing psychedelic work and healing work, but I've scaled back a bit. I'm still breath work, energy work. I'm seeing an
Right.
intimacy coach. I was a part of a men's group for a while. I was doing body work. I was doing EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And so I've done all
Right.
those different modalities to sort of integrate my psychedelic experiences and sort of try to heal from this trauma. I also try to get a good sleep. I try to exercise. I try to eat well. I try to journal. I try to have some sort of spiritual practice, although that last one I'm not doing a great job of right
Right.
now, but I'm always trying to improve. So I think all those
Right.
things together form my sort of integration practice and how I've gone about healing from this trauma.
Absolutely understand. Now, how's it going relationship wise? You mentioned you had issues forming deep relationships. Is that still a struggle?
Yeah, I'm still having some physical problems that are sort of making a long-term relationship difficult, but I am
Right.
working with an intimacy coach. I am continuing to do psychedelics, particularly the plant medicine ayahuasca, and I think that
Yes.
together is hopefully going to get me into a better place. But I've already seen a lot of improvement in my physical issues. I don't obsess about my pelvis anymore. It's just sort of something that hasn't quite fully released yet, but I think it's coming. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited for the future, and we'll see what holds in the months, years, and even decades to come.
Right. Yeah, I totally understand that because there's so much trauma in the groin area and the anal area, all of that, so much trauma. And I know for a lot of survivors, male survivors especially, they'll go one route or another, either being hypersexual, where they'll try to have as many partners as they can to try to process the abuse that way, or the other way where they're completely asexual and yeah, nothing physical is attractive at all. And I was definitely in that latter camp that would have relationships, would have girlfriends, but it could get to a certain point, and if it got a little too intimate, it's like, nope, I'd put on the brakes. They'd be going, wait, what happened? And it's like, no, no. And part of me was trying to convince myself it was just the strong moral center that I had. But now that I understand it, it's like, oh no, I was scared to death because it was so triggering from all of the memories that at that time with all those girlfriends, yeah, I'd still blocked those memories. So it wasn't until, yeah, like I said, age 30 when the abuse memories came back. All I did remember was the one when I was 20, the Methodist minister who abused me. So yeah, I completely understand that. And that's such a struggle. And I know so many survivors face that with relationship issues, developing friends, developing intimate partner relationships because of all that trauma and not being able to trust the other person. And the whole concept of physical touch and intimate touch can be so triggering because of all of those memories. So, yes, doing what you can, like you are. Yeah, I need to process the stuff and get the stuff out because if you just push it all down, it's still going to leak out anyway, but you can get it out in healthy ways. And that sounds like what you are doing for sure. So, got your story. So, it was just, sounds like three perps total, but as early as age 4. And then when did it stop?
I stopped toward the end of my second grade year.
Okay.
I fought back, and we had a
Right.
confrontation in my house, and he ended up choking me in his car.
Right.
So,
Now,
you know,
we often talk about disclosure, and obviously you didn't even remember all this until you were in your 20s. Once you started remembering this stuff, when did you start to disclose to others other than your therapists, your therapeutic team, friends, family? When were you able to disclose and how did that go? What was that
yeah.
disclosure like?
So I told my mom the next day. I think. Well, to be fair, this had come up before. It really came up after my fourth MDMA session. But after the second one, I had some suspicions that this individual had abused me, and I just decided that he sort of hadn't, or it seemed kind of outlandish, or because he was still at a school at the time, and I remember looking like, there was this whole
Mm,
this whole photo collage of like him and his partner with his dog, and I was like, this can't be the same guy. I think I'm full of shit here, but I wasn't. And it just kept coming back, and the dramatic stuff kept coming back, or it came back in the future sessions. So at that point, I was 100% certain. And so I told my mom the next day. She flew down to Austin to come support me. She was pretty stunned but supportive, and I really appreciate that. I sent a rambling text to friends that same day, and sort of Yeah, just a lot of thoughts at once. But I was pretty stunned for a while. It was all I thought about for a while, and I kind of obsessed over it. I don't really obsess over it anymore. It's just sort of something that happened. But there was a couple of years where it was really like I was really in it, and yeah, I think I needed that because of how traumatic and how scary and frankly life threatening at one point it was. So yeah, I
Right,
think to really work through that, it took a while, but I'm mostly on the other side now, I would say.
right. Excellent. So you told your mother, and how did she take it? What was her response?
She was pretty stunned, but I think there were a couple. She remembered him driving me home for a while. He is out as a gay man, not that. So
Right.
I think
Homosexuality and pedophilia are two different universes.
yes,
And sometimes pedophiles will use a gay mask and act like, oh, I'm just doing this because I'm gay. And it's like,
yeah,
no, no, they're two very different preferences.
absolutely. So yeah, so I think there was that, and just my physical issues that I've been experiencing, and so all of that together, I certainly, I felt believed. She definitely believed me. She was shocked, but sort of felt like the pieces sort of fit in certain ways, and yeah, so I didn't face a lack of support there, which I'm super grateful for. And Yeah, so I think yeah, I felt believed by her, and I felt believed by my friends. I think one way I think men are maybe a little more fortunate than women is because men struggle with this so much. I think people are more open to believing them if they are going to
Right.
disclose, and
Right.
I think
At
there's
the
less
age you
baggage.
are and how society is now, there's so much more information, now, the Me Too movement and so forth, so much more information about the fact that, yes, males can get abused. And like in your case, when you were much younger, females can be the perpetrator. And there's much more acceptance and understanding of that now.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've been following the Menendez case from the late 80s, early 90s, and that's still in the news today. But when it was first in trial, no one had heard of. It was so strange. The whole concept was mind blowing. It's like, no, little girls get abused, little boys do not. And certainly fathers would never abuse their sons. Never. That would not happen. They must be making that up because people didn't talk about it. Now, so many people have come out and shared their story. And the theme of my podcast, one of the themes is power of story. That the fact that more and more men come out like yourself, sharing your story, sharing this truth so that other men who are victims, survivors can hear that and say, I'm not alone. Yeah, that's actually a lot like my story. Wow, what did he do? Wow, he found healing. He got all that stuff out. And wow, that we inspire that next group to then get healing, and then they get healing, and then they share their story, and then people hear their story, and it just snowballs. So honored, so thrilled that you are not only getting healing but sharing your story, and that is so important. So with your healing journey, you tried lots of different things, and you mentioned quite a few. Anything else, or what have you tried that did not work at all, did not help whatsoever?
I tried ketamine in a clinic, and I think they gave me too much for sort of a pain protocol. This is before I
Hmm.
knew I'd been sexually abused, and I was getting very anxious, and they gave me mixed it with a benzo Ativan, and that was a really bad combination for me. I really wasn't healing, and it was sort of more like they were drugging me up, and it really disoriented me and threw me for a loop, and that was not a healing experience. And so I definitely think ketamine can help a lot of people in certain contexts, but I do think it can be kind of addictive, and it is not a classic psychedelic. And I think it needs to be done in the right dosage and the right setting and the right mindset, and with a trained clinician if it is going to be administered for a trauma protocol.
Right. Any other things? How much therapy have you done? I know you mentioned EMDR, that's often in a therapeutic setting, but as far as talking about the issues or when the therapists are administering these drugs, what are the protocols? What other things are they guiding you? Are they helping you? Are they marking things down? Are they even recording these sessions? So then you can say, oh, this is what I said. Wow. Because sometimes when you're on this stuff, you may not necessarily remember everything that you said.
Yeah, we don't typically record sessions. I think I remember the critical things, but I think I've done a shit ton of therapy between the therapy I do with my energy work or breath work. I
Right.
did traditional talk therapy for a while. And then the psychedelic sessions are really all therapeutic. And while I'm not usually talking a lot during them, certainly before and after, there's a lot of discussion about what I said or what I was thinking, how I'm feeling, and try to integrate these experiences and try to make sense and make meaning of what sort of occurred during my psychedelic sessions.
Right. So now the therapists, are they like writing notes? Okay, that yes, you said this, just to help notate whatever responses that you're getting so you wouldn't necessarily remember. It's like, oh, yes, you did this. Yeah, 30 minutes in, you were like convulsing on the floor or whatever. Uh, are they like notating that? They're like caring for you, making sure you breathe, all those things. Sounds like they're actively there in that supportive role while you're going through those uh, MDMA sessions or the other mind altering substances.
Hallucinogens.
Yes.
Yeah, they don't typically write things down unless I ask them to, which
Okay.
I don't usually. But we usually talk about, I was shaking for a while there, what came up. And there's a lot of deep processing afterward, in the hours afterward, the following week and weeks about, what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, what was kind of the key takeaways from the session, what were sort of the most impactful moments. Because the sessions are like 6 hours long.
Right.
It's not usually
Right.
something that you would document the whole thing of. I mean, there's some downtime for sure. Not in the sense that I'm
Right.
not feeling stuff, but just like the whole thing isn't like a, intense whirlwind the entire time, at least not usually,
Right.
So, but every session has some key takeaways or some key moments or memorable moments or pivotal stuff. So I think that's something I usually try to take away from in the weeks and months afterward about, what happened.
Right. Now, through your own healing journey, a recovery journey, it sounds like now you went from a survivor trying to find your own healing to now helping others heal. So explain that process. Where did you decide, oh, wait, I need to get training so I can help others?
Sure. So I would say I'm in the midst of training right now. Not
Okay.
actually actively. I was taking a coaching class, but I've sort of been derailed the last couple weeks from it. I'm not sure if I'm going to coach anyone in the near future, although I might. I'm sort of open to it, but it's not something I'm as passionate about as I was 6 months ago. Just because I'm not
Right.
sure I'm ready to be helping others. I'm still kind of actively in my own healing journey, and
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's my number one passion, but it's definitely something I'm considering. And I think because of how traumatic my experience was and that I am a CSI survivor or whatever, there aren't a ton of clinicians who are male survivors. And so I think I might be able to hold space or sort of go there with people that might, for clinicians who haven't had this happen to them, might struggle with. So
Right.
I think coaching or helping people heal from this is something I might and probably will explore at some point in the future, but I'm not actively looking to do it like tomorrow.
Gotcha. And I am a recovery life coach and mostly working with survivors. And I think having licensed therapists who are male and abuse survivors would be so key because I've talked to some of my clients. They say, yeah, their therapist doesn't even want to go there. They don't even want to talk about the abuse, what happened, the details. It's like, oh no, that's all in the past. We're just focusing on now and how those things are. It's like, no, all that trauma, like you said, needs to be released. It needs to get out. It needs to be processed. Otherwise, you're putting band-aids on a broken bone. And I think survivors get it. And I feel so honored where I can just be present with a client while they spill and share in detail what happened. So just so they can get out of their head and out of their heart. And that's another concept of the power of story. That's so freeing to get that out. And it really jumpstarts the healing process when you are able to, however it looks like, whether you're writing, blogging, journaling, sharing it on a podcast, or just writing it down and then burning it, just getting it out of your head is so helpful. Absolutely. And that having someone who gets it and can hold space for that person as they're releasing that is so helpful. So definitely would encourage that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would say I do think you can get stuck in the details for sure. This sort of happened to me. Does it really matter exactly how many times I was sexually abused? For me, I mean, it's a big number. I don't really know the exact number. I'll never know the exact number, but it's not, it's a high number. And I
Right.
think, trying to get to the bottom of like things like that, at the end of the day, but at the same time, I was really focused on my abuse, what actually happened for a while. And so I think it was very disorienting to have all this sort of come up from the ether, right? And kind of reorient my whole life around it and like kind of relitigate, what happened to me and my life experiences in the context of all my abuse. So I think writing it down through a book was really helpful and something I would definitely recommend for survivors looking to heal. Even if you don't put it in a book or put it publicly, yeah, having some sort of written record I think can be really therapeutic for people. So that would be one thing I'd recommend, or even just doing like a voice recording or some sort of documentation, I think, for what you remember and what you think. And that's been a good way for me to heal from my abuse.
Right. Absolutely. And not necessarily hopping on every detail, but just getting it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting out of your head is so healing. Absolutely. So let's see now, what other things are you doing now other than healing and working on your healing journey? What other things are you doing as well?
Yeah, so my book came out in December. I'm actively marketing it through podcasts like this one
And what's the
and
name?
through
What's the title of your book? And we'll put it in the show notes.
Trauma and Ecstasy: How Psychedelics Made My Life Worth Living.
Wow.
It is on Amazon. It can be found for a pretty cheap price. I think it's 99 cents right now.
Cool.
So yeah, anyone interested in that or any questions you have about psychedelics or healing, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And then I'm also actively looking for a full-time job. I'm doing some part-time work right now. I was doing some traveling before, but I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do next for a career now that this chapter is sort of, I wouldn't say it's behind me, but it's coming to a close. And my hope is this is the last big year of healing for me, and that next year in particular I'll be in a better place to sort of, I don't know if I ever necessarily move on. I think I'll always be doing healing work, but I was doing a lot the last couple of years, and I've scaled
Right.
back, and I'm continuing to scale back this year.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Likewise with my own story. A therapist, I think early on we were maybe twice a week, and then it was weekly, and then every other week, and then once a month. And now it's just as needed, which is very rare. But little crises come up here and there. And when I don't have any other supports, which I do have quite a bit that I've garnered elsewhere other than my own therapist, then I'll call him up and say, "Oh,"
Yeah.
and he's wonderful about that. But yeah, it sounds wonderful, and definitely want to keep in touch and find out the next chapter in your journey. We're excited to find out more. So you do not actually do MDMA on others, but you did write about a book about your own experiences then, correct? Or have you done, are you licensed to do that? Because usually it's a licensed therapist who has to perform these things legally, correct?
Well, just to be clear, I did all of my psychedelic work illegally. It is in a book, but it is not legal. So I did it at a unlicensed clinician shaman's house in Austin. So yeah, it is very much, MDMA is not really legal anywhere.
Well,
Psilocybin is legal in a couple places.
there is research, there is papers, there is documentations by clinicians out there strongly researching because of the effects, like you've been documenting, that it is very helpful and can be key to healing a lot of these severe physical traumas. So
Absolutely.
it sounds like you bypassed all that and you did your own thing, understand? So have you also shared your wisdom with others and performed these kinds of things with other people?
No, I mean, I've done
So
a little
legally,
bit
could
of,
you admit it? I don't know.
no, but I've done some group medicine work a little bit, but mostly it's been individual. But no, I am not administering any sort of psychedelics with anyone right now. I'm not even coaching or helping people integrate,
Right.
although I might do that. But guiding people is something I really don't have any interest in right now. It's very difficult, I think, to be a good guide. And I think it takes years and even decades of experience in some cases. So
Right.
that's not something I'm actively pursuing. But there are a lot of underground guides around the country in the US, and I know of a couple already, and I'm sure I'll meet more. And so if you're listening to this and ever like, I want to find a guide, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to this guy, Tucker Max, who will probably refer you to someone good. And so, yeah, there are definitely people that are willing to refer people. And, I think the FDA denied MDMA legality last year, but there was a big push, and I hope that'll change in the years to come.
Right. I know a lot of clinicians out there have done research and it is quite effective. And I mean, that EMDR is only out like for the last 10 years or so. All this new research is out there, things that can help the brain heal. And this is like a whole new decade of brain research. And I think we're just tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to learn and so many more options coming down the pike that this is definitely one I've heard so much about and so many strong positive things from well-respected clinicians saying, yeah, this can actually be quite helpful done in the right settings and so forth. So yes, this has been very fascinating. Any final words you would like to share with that survivor listening out there?
Yeah, I would say I think really healing is possible. For me, it really required psychedelic therapy, and I'm really happy as a survivor that I took that route. And I could not have healed the way I have without psychedelics. So that's just my own perspective. But I do think psychedelics changed my life. And for any survivor, yeah, it could be a good fit. You know, I don't want to tell anyone to do anything or give advice, but I can just speak from my own experience that it was totally transformational for me.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much. That wraps it up, and we'll see you next time on the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. If you would like to learn more about my coaching with Polar Live Consulting, where I provide one-on-one coaching and group coaching, both with a focus on healing for male survivors, reach out to me at polarliveconsulting.com. That is Polar spelled Polar. I would love to hear from you. I want to hear your story. If you would like your story featured on this podcast, contact me via my website. If you like this podcast, please rate and review because that's how other people can find me, and I really want to spread this message of healing and hope to others. And remember, you are not alone. Healing is possible, and the abuse was not your fault. Let me repeat that. The abuse was not your fault. See you next time on the Healing for Male Survivors podcast.